Today we're going to take a look at the treatment goal plan. This is a tutorial to help you in being able to sit down with the client and the guardian and as many family members as possible in developing the goal. Where do you want to go? So here you have an overview of the form. It can be found on SharePoint in the Clinical tab under Clinical Forms. You will put the client's name and the date that you are sitting down with the family to complete the treatment goal plan. And then whatever the miscue is, whatever issue you feel the family is ready to work on, you will put under list services needed or problems to be addressed. And this is usually written in the problem format, in the negative. Then under goal statement, you will write if it's the first, the second, the third, whatever number it is. And here is where you begin to shift the family's focus. You're going to write the goal statement in the positive statement. You're going to write it as if it's already happened, it's already been accomplished, and you're going to write it from the positive. And the principles that are going to guide your goal statement are going to be the 4 neuroscience principles around how does the brain change. We're not here simply trying to change the behavior. We are here to shift the brain to bring about lasting change and not just a behavior change. So it will be how the child relates in relationship to the caregivers, to the adults in their life, to the people of authority. So we're going to take a look at our 4 guiding neuroscience principles that talk to us about neuroplasticity. The fact that the brain changes in relation to a positive caring other with a corrective experience when both parties are motivated to bring about a change. Let us stop and review that for a moment. The next piece we're going to take a look at is the specific steps that you're going to take. Now, while there are only 3 lines, if you need to break those down, work in halves so that you get 5 or 6 steps, that's fine. Don't let just the 3 lines limit you. But the steps that you're going to take depend on whether or not you're starting from the parent's perspective or you're starting from the child's perspective. If you're starting from the parent's perspective, then you're going to work on the neuroscience components of creating being the positive caring other, creating a corrective experience for the child, or being in relationship with the kid, with the child. If you're coming from the child's perspective, then it's going to be motivation. That's most important. So let me start with the child's motivation. If a child, let's say, is lying or gets things themselves, doesn't let the adults be in charge, so the goal would then read, Johnny will allow his foster parent or mother or foster dad or whoever to meet his needs. Johnny will, that will be the goal. And so the first step is that we have to find out what is making Johnny steal or lie or do whatever. So I usually like to use a detective approach. And I don't know what the current movies are, but it used to be Blue's Clues or Scooby-Doo, or you can even use one of the detective books if your child is a reader. And so I asked them if they know what it is to be a detective, and if so, the next time they want to take something that doesn't belong to them, or take something without asking for it, or get up and go get food themselves instead of asking the adult to get it, I want them to stop and ask themselves, what is keeping me from asking my mom or asking my dad if I can have this? What is going on inside? And so then that would be step 1. Johnny will be a detective, or Johnny will act like a detective in determining what keeps him from asking for his needs and wants. And so maybe I'd start off he's doing it 0 times, I might say 3 times a day. And then the second step will be Johnny will draw what's in the way of asking, or if Johnny can write, Johnny will write, and then maybe he keeps it so that he'll write it 3 times a day. Or maybe it's twice a week, but something specific so we can come back and then praise him for doing it that number of times. So by whom is Johnny? Target date, give him 3 to 4 weeks. And then you go to the next step, maybe the parent will notice or cue Johnny when they notice that they've asked Johnny. Johnny got up and went and did it himself. Oh, Johnny, I see that you got up and did that yourself instead of asking me. I'm wondering if this would be a good time for you to do the homework your therapist asked you to do. So you could put that step is the parent will cue Johnny, and the parent will cue Johnny each time or 3 times a day, something specific, and then it's Johnny's turn. So the next step would be Johnny will allow his parent to redirect him and go and write down what stopped him from asking in that moment or draw the picture. And then the next step might be that the parent praises Johnny. Thank you for doing your homework. That lets me know you really do want to change this. So the next step would be the parent will praise Johnny each time he allows them to redirect them. And then if you want to have your role, the therapist, in there, then you could say the therapist will review the issues, the problems, the data, or the clues that Johnny came up with during his homework, and together with Johnny, the therapist, and the parent, they will come together to find out what is in the way of Johnny asking. That's how you're going to really set your client up for success, so that in the next treatment goal plan, then you can work on the things that Johnny identified. You don't want to work in the dark. So one important point for me to make here is that as a therapist, you don't want to go in with a plan thinking you know what is behind the child's behavior. We don't know, but the child knows, and each child is unique. Each family is unique. So you want to go in with a not knowing and realize that as human beings, we are hardwired for health and wholeness. So if we, the therapist, the clinician, goes in with a blank slate, curious about what's behind this behavior, that creates a safe environment for the child not to feel judged, for the child to feel that they can go within, that they can really take a look at what's behind their behavior and know that you will accept them regardless of what comes up. So that's very, very, very important. You don't want to have a preconceived idea of what's going on. Get the data from the client. And then with those steps, by whom you identify who's doing it, target date, I usually say to my kiddo, how many weeks, how long do you think you'll need to gather the data to find out? And my kids usually say, oh, I can tell you by next week. Well, I know they won't be able to tell me by next week. I know it won't be complete. And I'll say, you know what? That'll be great. Let me give you 3 weeks. 3 times I'll come back. And if you know everything by next week, that will be awesome. But if they don't know everything by next week, I've set them up for success. I haven't set them up for failure. I haven't set them up for shame. When I come back and they don't know, they've got one fact. That's huge. That's one to start with. That treatment goal stays in place until they have 3. They've done it 3 times a day. Then they've reached that goal. Then we can review it and then move to the next goal. Now that is 3 times a day. I also want to say how many days a week. Maybe I say 5 times, 5 days a week. Give them, a couple of days off, or 3 times a week, or whatever. Whatever it is, it just needs to be specific. And that's going to be important. Then the second part of that is the strengths or resources that the family has. So if Johnny's willing to do his homework, the fact that Johnny feels safe enough to do his homework, that the parent is a part of treatment, that the parents are willing to support Johnny in being a detective, or the parents are motivated to support Johnny in bringing about change, or the relationship is positive, or they both care about one another, they just don't know how to change the behaviors. And then in interventions, you're going to write down scanning for the positive, being curious. So all the interventions that we've spoken about, these are the ones where you would write them down specifically in that line that says the interventions to be used are. In this last part, if it's the first treatment goal, then you put progress towards goal and you write initial goal. If you've been working on the goal and this is your review and the client has achieved it, then you can say goal completed, family and Johnny did extremely well, meeting the objectives of the goal, and period. So the next treatment plan review date, if it's the initial goal, will be whatever the last date was up in your target date, usually 3 to 4 weeks from the initial. If it's an ongoing goal, if you've worked on this goal and the child did achieve it, then you would say under next treatment plan review date, you would put new goals set. If they didn't achieve the goal, then progress towards goal would be in progress. 50% of the time Johnny is doing it, whatever, just write down whatever progress they're making, and then you would review it again in 4 weeks and 4 sessions. The client signs off. If they're 6 or older, usually they want to sign off, and the guardian signs off, and then you sign off. If you are a new therapist, you want to take your initial treatment goal plans to your supervisor so that they can review them, give you feedback, and then the supervisor will sign off. If you are a seasoned clinician, you do not need to have your supervisor sign off. That's not a requirement. The original treatment goal plan we use is the one that's done at assessment, and it's plan of treatment. And you will use that one to start. That's what your notes will be based on. But this initial treatment goal plan should be done starting in the 3rd session. And by that time, you should know your client. You should have attuned. You should have been open. You should have been aware of what the issues are from each family member and be identifying what needs to shift. And you just start with one place, because from a family systems perspective, we know with equifinality, no matter where we start, all roads lead to health and wholeness, and that's essential. If you need additional guidelines, they can be found in the new hire manual, Clinical Manual 1, on pages 12 to 14, and here is what they will look like. And if you use those strategically, they can help step you through creating a treatment goal plan. Good luck.